Hello and welcome to the MB Om podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the MB Om podcast. My name is Amanda and I'll be your host for this and all episodes of the show. This episode of the podcast is brought to you in part by Offering Tree. When you're a yoga teacher and you're trying to build your digital presence, it can be daunting. First, you might need a website. There are a lot of great tools for building websites like WordPress, Wix, and Squarespace. Then you need a way to email your students. Again, there are tools for that like MailChimp and Constant Contact, but that's another account to pay for and a password to remember. Then you need a way to schedule and register your students. Again, there are tools for that, but it's another account to create and pay for and another password to remember. Oh wait, how do I integrate my scheduling tool with my website? There are so many things to remember. So instead of putting all of this stuff off for another day because it's too daunting, let me tell you about a better way. Offering Tree set out to make creating your digital presence fun, easy, and affordable. With one account, you can create a website in minutes that has your schedule built right in. They also have email marketing tools to collect email addresses, send newsletters, and automated emails to your subscribers. It all works seamlessly together with one account and one subscription. To learn more about what Offering Tree can do for your digital presence, visit offeringtree.com/MBOM. Offering Tree has been supporting MBOM for close to a year now, and I not only love the product, but I also love the people. The team at Offering Tree is super awesome. They are a small business just like you and me, and they have great customer service for anything that you need. And Offering Tree is providing special pricing for MBOM listeners, so be sure to visit offeringtree.com/MBOM to receive your discount. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you in part by FavYogis. The FavYogis app is back with new features for teachers that let you create and manage your own private classes while making payment and registration a breeze. Do you have regular private clients? Make life easier with autopay. Forget about remembering to Venmo, or if you're Canadian, try some sort of e-transfer or PayPal combination. You can use autopay to enable repeat payments and keep calendars in sync with classes. Google Calendar integration automatically updates teachers and student classes when you make changes. It's still just your yoga. Teachers add classes, students add teachers, and teachers and students stay connected. So head on over to the App Store on your device and find FavYogis. It's FavYogis. On top of that, it's totally free to download and give a try. So head on over to your App Store and find FavYogis. FavYogis. Oh, and make sure you use code MBOM and let them know that I sent you. And of course, a huge thank you to Offering Tree and FavYogis for supporting the show. And of course, a big thank you to you guys for checking them out. Now on to today's episode of the podcast. I am super excited to be joined by John and Chris Yax from Yax Yoga Concepts. And Chris and John are not only yoga teachers and business partners, but they're also brothers. And on this episode of the podcast, we talk about their yoga journey, becoming studio owners together, creating their own forms of teacher training, and all of the business and entrepreneurship lessons that they've learned along the way. We dive deep into what it takes to be a successful studio owner and so much more. So I hope that you guys enjoy this episode with Chris and John Yax. Chris and John, welcome to the podcast today. I'm really excited to have you guys here with me.
We're super excited to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for the sake of listeners, who is who? Your voices are pretty similar.
They're very close.
Our mom can't tell the difference, quite honestly. Yeah, I can sit there and have a full-on hour conversation with her, and she will think it's John the entire time.
Yeah.
But this is Chris.
Yeah, and this is John.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, guys. And if listeners get confused, I'm sure that's fine since your mom does anyways. And where are you guys joining me from today?
Virginia Beach, Virginia. Yeah, we were born and raised here.
Nice. And is that where your whole business is based and that sort of thing?
Yeah, we have one studio called Hot House Yoga in Virginia Beach, and a second one about 30 minutes west in a city called Norfolk, Virginia.
Awesome. That's amazing. And I definitely want to hear more about your studio and all that good stuff. But I thought a good place to start would be to back up a little bit and talk about your yoga story. Can you guys tell me how you guys first got into yoga?
Yeah, for sure. So Chris and I were in martial arts world forever and ever. We studied an art called Yax Yoga Concepts, which was a philosophy that Bruce Lee developed way back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And it was, so it's basically like mixed martial arts. And we wanted to be as good as Bruce Lee. So we trained like madmen. We were doing 3 sessions a day. I mean, like we're going full blast, like we're probably overtraining. But we started getting injured a lot because we were overtraining, and we didn't want to lessen up the training. So we were like, all right, what can we do to heal faster and get back to training faster? And our sister had been into yoga for a while, and so we were like, all right, let's try yoga out. She taught us a class. That was our first yoga class experience. And then we sought after more yoga, and then started practicing more, and then became slowly addicted to it.
Yeah. And just to back up for a second, our trajectory within martial arts was we're going to open up a martial arts academy. That was our vision for our future. And we ended up, the house we grew up in, for a number of different reasons, we ended up renovating it, and we we had to lift the ceiling because we were training inside the house earlier, like years past, and just doing jumping jacks. The ceilings were so low that we would be like grinding our knuckles on the ceiling itself. So we're like, first thing that's got to go is that ceiling. So we elevated, and all of a sudden one thing led to another, and we doubled the square footage of the house. But we started doing classes, martial arts classes, out of the house, and that was really our first business that we got into.
Yeah, so we had a backyard. It's kind of garage style martial arts academy, and just around that time, I went to teacher training. I got certified, came back, started teaching at a studio, and a local studio, hot studio, and so we were doing martial arts, teaching martial arts, and then I was teaching yoga on the side. And a couple months later, Chris went to training. He came back. And initially we were just like, all right, we're just going to go to training to learn and kind of develop this and understand yoga better. And when we got back, we started teaching in a studio. And after a few years of that, we realized maybe this martial arts academy thing should be a yoga academy, a yoga studio. So that was the kind of the birth of it. And what was kind of cool too, man, is that we, this was like in 2000. This was 2000. We built the house, renovated the house in 2001, 2002. We got certified in 2003. So this was all in that time before 2008 happened, when everything, the building business and bubble, the building bubble was expanding. And so when we did the renovations in the house, that gave us equity to borrow against to open up our first studio. So it was really synchronistic how it all flowed. But through martial arts, that's how we got to yoga.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm pretty sure I've interviewed somebody else who had the same sort of similar story, obviously not the exact same, but came from martial arts. So there's definitely a connection, I think, between martial arts and yoga. But I'm curious what it was like you renovate this house and then you open this up, and what was it like sort of being studio owners at that point?
It was really like, just to dive a little bit more into how synchronous it was. When we were doing the renovations, our brother, who ended up being a business partner, we've since separated the partnership that way, but he lost his job and ended up getting into a position where he was a project manager building houses. And so he understood the build out from like a degree that no one else could ever understand. He did that for a number of years. So when we had the equity, we also had the brother with the know-how of understanding what exactly needed to happen to get the build out done. So we were able to do it
and on top of that, I'll just add to that for a moment. On top of that, when we renovated the house, the banks wouldn't lend us enough money. So Chris and I and our other brother did probably 80+% of the work ourselves. So we had all these friends that were like leads in framing, leads in drywall, and all of this. So all these projects that we all of a sudden had this crash course of learning how to do this to build the house. We took those skills and ended up using to build out the first studio. So But to answer your question correct, I mean, it was a grind. Like, but it was like a labor of love. You know, you open up your first studio and you're like, you don't know what you don't know. And so we just worked every single day. Chris and I taught all the classes. We worked the front desk. We managed. We did everything, almost everything ourselves. So it was,
wow.
it was full blast, you know, but I look back at it now. We weren't married at the time. You know, this is 15 years ago. So we weren't married. We didn't have kids. We just we were married to our studio, just devoted to it, and spent all the waking hours, you know, trying to build it and get it up and going.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm curious, I'm sure there's lots of people out there who have either had that experience or want to open their own studio. What are some of the biggest things that you learned through that first studio experience?
Oh, as far as maybe one of the keys to having a successful studio is to just making sure that what you're offering is really consistent. Like, consistency is everything for people to measure progression, you know, especially with, you know, that was in 2005. And now, you know, yoga has really become mainstream. You see it on all commercials, you know, any pharmaceutical ad has someone doing a Warrior 2 in it. And, you know, like every grocery store, when they're talking about healthy food, has a person, you know, hands in prayer position of the heart. So you see it way, way more, which also means that there's a lot of new people coming through. And so I think one of the keys, if you're thinking about opening up a yoga studio, is just to make sure that what you're teaching is very consistent, regardless of who's teaching it, so that when students come in, they can feel traction, they can feel those little victories, because the consistency for them and their ability to really fall in love with the practice and get the most out of it is, for us, what we learned. Because in the beginning, we didn't do that. We had every single class had a different name to it, which just confused people. We had a morning rise and shine, and a midday escape, and an afternoon relaxation. Everyone's like, well, what's the difference? We're like, actually, it's the same class.
It's the same class, just a different name. If that wasn't confusing enough.
So don't confuse me with your names of the classes. And what was happening is, you know, John and I were consistent amongst each other, but we would still we would start throwing in different sequences here and there in a class that we said was, this is what the experience is going to be like. You're going to get these poses.
Or one of the first teachers that we had come and teach with us was she taught every single class was completely different, man. So it was all over the place. People are coming in expecting a specific kind of class, and she's just throwing whatever, the whole kitchen sink at them. All the poses that she just learned from the workshop she just took the weekend before, you know, something crazy like that. So.
So it's and that's we learned also, because and people fell in love with the teacher. She was awesome. She was amazing. She had a beautiful heart, and she had this super deep understanding of the practice, and she loved it. And so people really resonated with her. But what happened too, this is about 2 years into it, we had a falling out. She left, and we had students who left with her. And we realized, man, for us to invest literally everything we had at the time, we put our house on the line, we took a home equity line, and we were all in. If this thing failed, we don't have an exit strategy. We don't have a safety net. And so what we realized within that first year and a half, 2 years was, oh my God, if we allow such variability within the classes, it doesn't make sense on a business level. Because now we've given our power to be successful to teachers who, God bless them, and I love them, but have they don't have the same vision, the same perspective, the same mission necessarily. And so to allow such variability, we realized really quickly, man, that's not a recipe for a successful, sustainable business if we're depending on the teachers themselves, which sounds a little counterintuitive because that's what you're offering. For dictating the experience within the classes. And so that was a huge, huge lesson for us was, no, we have the mission, we have the vision. This is what we want people to experience. And for us to take ownership over that and to control the experience, whether within the sequencing of the yoga, the music, the lighting, the heat, all the atmosphere that people come in to have that transformation, whatever it is, physical, mental, emotional, that if we weren't in more control over that and dictating that experience, it was not going to work out well for us as a studio.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. How do you ensure that all the teachers are kind of on board with your branding? Like, what did you guys do differently the next time you hired?
So it took a little bit of time when we, as we started getting more teachers to teach with us, we were still sending them to our original teacher training in Florida. And then when they would come back, we took it was about 2 to 3 months to train them up, to get them teaching exactly what we wanted them to teach and how we wanted them to teach. So there was tons of support and tons of coaching, but then we realized, that this is way too much. We need to pull it in-house and do our own teacher training. So about 2000 we opened the studio in 2005. In 2008, we started our own teacher trainings, and that was the key. So when we started our own teacher trainings, we could develop our teachers exactly how we needed to, and then teach them the methodology that we're teaching the entire structure, the styles, the whole thing, right? And give them the whole experience, so that when they came out, they were already trained up and ready to jump into classes. And then past that, once they're doing that, Chris and I were coaching them the whole time. So we'd go take their classes and then give them feedback afterwards. Now we have almost 30 teachers, I think, something like that, 25, 30 teachers. And we have coaches for both studios. We have specific people that are trained in our methodology and understand exactly how the classes need to be. And so they'll jump into classes and give teachers feedback. And so the teachers, what's kind of unique is that teachers that teach with us constantly get better and better really fast because they're getting that feedback. They're getting constant coaching. So that's the way.
Yeah, we've really just made a decision to take teacher training in-house so that we can train them, and then to also invest in their knowledge, their education, and their continuing education as they progress.
In our opinion, too, it's one of the keys for anyone that is running a studio or that wants to open a studio is to really start at some point, and maybe a little bit down the road, but as soon as they can, start their own teacher training, understand what system they want to teach, understand that there has to be consistency within that system, and then train their teachers themselves so that they create the culture for their studios. That's the key to success.
Yeah, and we don't hire any teacher that hasn't gone through our own personal teacher training.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I feel like this is becoming like kind of a more and more popular sort of model of doing things. And yeah, I definitely like see the pros to it. I guess the cons are like, if you don't realize that that's how things are going to be, it's tough if you just go take another teacher training and then you're applying for jobs and you're like, and everyone's like, oh no, you have to take my teacher training. And you're like, but I just paid $4,000 for another teacher training.
That's hard.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's kind of, it's like, where does the, I guess, cycle start, right? Because I think that there's so many yoga teachers who just decide they want to be yoga teachers and they don't realize, and this was definitely me, like I didn't know how to get a job as a yoga teacher, what to look for. I'd never considered, oh, maybe I should take a teacher training at a certain studio because that's where I want to work. I was just like, I want to become a yoga teacher, and looked up some programs and was like, this one sounds cool. I'm going to do this one. So yeah, I guess it's tough that way for sure.
Yeah. And there's beautiful styles that are taught by like the original teachers out there that some people are like, no, I want to go and take like a Jivamukti training from the source, from the people that developed the system. And then, but even like a Jivamukti studio, they're like, if you were trained in Jivamukti, you can go and teach at their studio. So it's still, it can work in that way if your studio is a Jivamukti studio, Ashtanga studio, and you went and trained with some of the top teachers in those styles, But even with that, the people that own the studios, that have their house on the line or have their life savings on the line, need to be really hardcore with their consistency and knowing that when a teacher's coming in, they're teaching a Jivamukti class if it's Jivamukti studio, or an Ashtanga, or whatever style that they decide to train in. So it still opens it up for like, there's beautiful teachers that are doing amazing things, that have been teaching for 30, 40 years, that are doing teacher trainings that just amazing at what they do. That that it still works in the model, depending on what kind of studio you want to open. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That totally makes sense too. Like, I think that you do have to consider your clientele, right? And it's like, if somebody thinks that they're coming to a Ashtanga class and then it's like restorative, they might be disappointed that they paid like $20 or whatever the drop-in fee is for that. So yeah, I think that there is definitely something very valid about like being clear about what you offer and making sure that your teachers are teaching within whatever that offering is, just so that there is like expectations are clear for a clientele. They know what they're paying for. They understand what they're coming to, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And one of the other big pieces that I want to throw in there too is that a lot of studios offer too many styles. And we kind of talked about that with consistency, but like there's friends of ours that have studios that they offer like 10 different styles, Amanda, and like beautiful for somebody that wants to come in and try some different styles. But people's psychology is that when they find what they love, they want to do that. And if somebody offers 10 different styles, that person that loves the restorative class can only get that twice a week or something like that. Because there's so many styles on the schedule, a lot of times those studios don't allow enough of those classes so that people can get traction in that specific style. So that's another big thing too, is that a lot of studios are struggling because they're just offering too many things. And that's what else happens with that is, like, if I have a Jivamukti class and my Jivamukti teacher calls in sick, and now I have to get my Iyengar teacher to teach that Jivamukti class, you don't no idea what you're going to get. You're like, well, I don't really know Jivamukti. I teach Iyengar, but I'll go for it. And then the students that come into that class don't have a good experience, and it can start to rattle the culture and rattle the studio. So
I was just talking to a friend. He was visiting from Florida, and he was in Key West for work, and he was looking at this yoga studio. He was like, I've been practicing a while, and on the class schedule it said Bikram yoga, and he was like, he likes the heat, and so he was like, yeah, I'll go to that one. And as he goes in, and they're like, oh no, it's a kettlebell yoga class.
What?
He was like, that's exactly what he said. And he's like a no nonsense dude. So he was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, no, it's like me and this other teacher, we developed it. There's yoga and there's kettlebells, and you should definitely try it. And like, and that's the problem. Cause like, I don't know if like they designed it or if they just didn't change the name on the schedule, but you have this mix of a match of I'm coming for this, but I'm getting that. And all of a sudden you're throwing weights around. You end up injuring his shoulder during it. But anyway, that ends up being like a slight example of what happens in the Wild West of yoga studios.
Yeah, that's crazy too. I feel like Bikram and some sort of hot yoga with kettlebells are two very different things, in my opinion.
What a recipe.
Toes are getting broken.
Seriously, I'm so sweaty I can't hold my kettlebell. Swing it into a wall, smash it.
Yeah, that seems like 90 or 105 degree room with kettlebell seems like a really bad idea to me.
Not a good mix. The other thing I want to mention, like for anyone listening to this that's like they want to go out and start, open a yoga studio for the first time. The other thing I would say is to study systems from people that are successful in other yoga studios or people that are successful in other industries, because one of the biggest perceptions I think with people, and it was with Chris and I ourselves when we first started.
Forever.
We were really good at martial arts, which made us think we were going to be really good at yoga, and we weren't. It took a long time. But we got really good at the practice of yoga, and then we opened up our business and thought, well, we're really good at yoga and really good at these other areas. We develop high levels of skill. Business is just going to naturally flow from those skills. And the reality is, business is a separate skill.
It's an art form.
A separate art form. We have, like, for anybody, so anybody's like looking that, okay, I think I want to open up a studio, study from people that run really, really solid businesses that really understand how teams and systems work inside a business, because it can collapse decades for those people. It can collapse decades if you study with the right people. Because all of it, Amanda, is just frameworks to a specific result. And and if other people are successful with it, there's a trail that you can follow to their success,
Yeah, yeah, I love that tip for sure. Do you guys have any like recommendations of people or books or courses or anything that you guys took that was really helpful for your own business learning?
Yeah, probably like we've had a bunch of coaches over the last 5 years specifically. Probably the one that changed, not just in what he taught, but then the connection of people that we were introduced to via him, was a man by the name of Russell Brunson. He owns a SaaS software company called ClickFunnels, and he has 3 books. One is
.com Secrets.
One is Expert Secrets, and then he's actually coming out with Traffic Secrets. And it's funny because you're thinking, wait, .com Secrets, how does that relate to my yoga business and my offline world? And there's to what John was saying, there's frameworks that he teaches of how online can support offline. And Expert Secrets, it's all about like messaging and how you create the message and wrap the offer and create a movement. And that's really what any successful business is doing. What's fascinating is that he has a software business about as boring as you could possibly imagine. And he has created a culture of just the most amazing diehard fans that you've ever seen. And it's because he was actually utilizing what he's been teaching in those. So yeah, Russell Brunson, follow him. He's really active on social. Get his books, definitely .com Secrets. We've read that one. Expert Secrets, we've read that multiple times. And then just people like who trained with him that then went off and did their own thing. Right now we're in a mastermind group called Offer Lab with a gentleman named Steven Larson. And we actually, this weekend, we're leaving to go to Boise, Idaho for a conference called Offer Mind that he puts on every year. So yeah, we're super excited about that.
Yeah, awesome. I've read Expert Secrets. So yeah, great recommendation. Definitely lots of stuff that's really valuable, I think to any business, but definitely to a yoga business. Hey yogis, we're just taking a quick little break from the podcast to talk about PunchPass. PunchPass is everything you need and nothing you don't at a price you can afford. Their software is simple yet powerful, efficient and easy to use. The team at PunchPass knows what it's like to run a small business like yours because they are a small business too. PunchPass understands your challenges and they take pride in delivering great service. When you're with PunchPass, you're not alone. They lift you up and support the connections you have with your client community. They listen, they care, and they're here to support you. So if you're looking for support from easy-to-use software with great people behind it, visit punchpass.com/mbiome to try PunchPass free for 2 weeks. I am super excited to be paired with PunchPass because I think that there's a lot of softwares out there and sometimes it's really hard to choose what's right. And for me as a small business, I'm looking for something that understands my needs as a small business. And that's exactly what PunchPass does. They have great pricing options, they have great people, and overall, they're just a really great option if you're a yoga teacher or a small business looking for a great software. So once again, head on over to punchpass.com/mbiome to try PunchPass free for 2 weeks. All right, now back to the podcast episode. I'm curious, so you guys had your one studio and now you've got 2 locations. Can you tell me what it was like growing your yoga studio enough to open a second location and then the actual process of opening this second business or second part of your business, I guess?
Yeah, the first studio, like I said, we were every day and teaching classes, and we got to, it was 3 years, I think.
2 years. We opened north in 2007.
So we very quickly got out of the red, got into the black. We started making money, and we started looking at our second location. The build out for our first location, we did it on a shoestring. Beautiful build out, like locker rooms, like spa, like locker rooms, all tiled and granite and everything. So we put money in specific places, and then we did all the work ourselves. The second studio cost probably twice as much to build out. And so we took a loan from the bank, but at that point, Amanda, the bank was looking at our business and saying, well, you guys are actually, you're doing well. Right? They saw the numbers. They're like, okay, we'll loan you guys some money. And so we went into our second location. and did the build out, start everything up. And one of the biggest pieces to that was all of a sudden, Chris and I had to manage 2 locations, be in both places, split up our teaching. Thankfully, there was 2 of us, and then we had teachers at the time too. But then it was okay. We need to train people up from this area, right? Because we trained people up in the original studio location, which is Virginia Beach, which was like 20, almost 30 minutes away from the other location. And they were like, they were cool with traveling for a little while, but they didn't want to do that all the time. So once we got up and going, soon after we did the teacher training and pulled people from that location that were interested in doing training and then developed teachers for that specific studio. So that was one of the biggest challenges. A few years after that, actually, man, we opened up in Richmond, Virginia, which is about 2.5 hours north of us, our 3rd location. And that again was a huge challenge because now we're 2.5 hours away. We had no teachers. We bent our rules at that point, and we're like, all right, we're going to hire some teachers that haven't necessarily trained with us, but we're just going to put them through a training program, get them ready, and then open up the studios. And so we were Chris and I were traveling up there to teach, and it was full blast. But it was the same thing, like getting teachers that understand your culture and that know what you're teaching was one of the biggest challenges. A few years after that, we opened up a 4th location in Richmond.
Yeah, I was on the south side of Richmond in Midlothian. So when we entered into the business, there were 4 partners, 3 brothers. So it's myself, Chris, John, and then our oldest brother, Jimmy. And really, he was like a brother. The 4th partner, Mike, he entered into it as well. And so it was 4 of us. And so one of the things that we had the luxury of is when we opened the second one, Mike, whose family owned a residential development company, he was able to negotiate leases. He understood the aspect of it that John and I didn't understand and didn't care to understand at that point. Our brother Jimmy, who was working for Mike doing residential building, understood the build out process. And so we had key people in key positions able to help us expand so that John and I could focus on like what matters and what's our zone of genius, which was, okay, it's teachers, it's getting those systems in place, it's getting teachers trained up and putting them in and taking their classes and coaching them so that when people come in to experience what we have to offer, they're getting the best. And so that continued to the 3rd studio, it continued to the 4th studio. At that point, our trajectory was we're going to open up 5. We had 2 locally, and then 3. We're going to open up 3 in the Richmond is the capital of Virginia. And so we said we're going to open up 3 there, and then we'll pause for a second. We'll see where we are. We'll see what needs to be tweaked and where we want to go from that point.
And possibly go up to DC after that point. It's kind of the idea.
Yeah, once the 4th one was built, it was a mistake in the location because of the density that was not there. If you look at that area, as far as the median income, which is one of the key metrics that you're looking at when you're looking at demographics to see if it's going to be a successful studio or not. But what we missed was the density. So as far as the median household income, it was like 3rd in the country.
It was huge,
but density wasn't there. Like there's lots of like horse farms and old money, and so people that weren't really interested in doing yoga, and that you just didn't have enough of them. And so that one studio was struggling for a period of time that was longer than any other studio was struggling. Like there's always that beginning. You're trying to get traction, trying to get attention from people, and you're marketing, you're advertising, you're doing everything, but it just prolonged and prolonged. And then during that time, our personal lives changed completely. John and I got married 2011, John in 2007. At this point, we both have one child and another one on the way. And so it started, and then we're like the one studio is pulling down the numbers of the others. And like, it got really challenging for us as a business and for us as a partnership in 2015 and 2016.
And so at that point, we had some really intense discussions with our partners, and we're like, all right, it's time to shift this thing. And that's when we restructured our business. We bought out our partner. We split up the studios. So our older brother took the studios. He actually moved up to Richmond and was living there with his wife. And so he took over those studios and solely owns those and runs those, does whatever he wants to do up there. And then, and Chris and I took the two studios in Southern Virginia, in Virginia Beach and in Norfolk. And then we also completely took over the spin-off business that we had, Yax Yoga Concepts, which is all teacher training and retreats and workshops.
Yeah, and we bought out the fourth partners that were still in the middle of paying every single month. Yeah. So it's been a wild ride, quite honestly, over the last 15 years. If you asked us in 2005, like, what's it going to look like in 2019? There is no way I could have just told you the story that I just told you.
That's fair. That's fair for sure. Yeah. I mean, that sounds intense. And I feel like, once you add like wives and children to the mix too, it's like you've got other people that you're thinking about on top of just like what is going to be good for you guys. And then, yeah, I mean, I don't own like a bunch of businesses. So I feel like it's like you see people running businesses that are international or global all the time. And I feel like it must be the type of thing where all of a sudden you have this business that's in this different location and it's like, well, crap, there's so much stuff to think about and I can't be there instantaneously. Like I feel like there must be challenges in and of itself, especially with a yoga studio, with just being so far away from it.
Yeah. And like, this is, we had, by that point when we opened up in Richmond, we had kind of worked what I'm about to tell you out. But when it was the hardest thing in the beginning just to hire our first front desk person.
Control issues, man.
I mean, it was like, wait, they're not going to talk to the people like we talk to them. Like, I know if I talk to them, I know. And then I go teach them and then I come back out and I talk to them again. They're going to sign up. What's going to happen when this person comes in who doesn't know what I know, who can't input their information into the computer and the software system like I do it? So it was a struggle. But then, amplify that by 1,000 when you're 2.5 hours north in a studio that I literally just can't be there. Not to mention, like, I don't know what's going on the day to day. And so at that point, what ended up happening, because our intention was all of the partners live in Virginia Beach, and we're going to open that up as a satellite school to see, can it work? Can our model work? Can we do it remotely? And in the build out process of it, the oldest brother, Jimmy, the former business partner, and his wife ended up moving up to Richmond to be closer. So it fulfilled that. And in the long run, looking back at it, it made the most sense for them and how it all turned out. They're owning those studios now outright. So it made, it all worked out well. Yeah. But yeah, to your point, it was a huge struggle for two reasons. One, we knew that there had to be that consistency that we really started this whole conversation about, and we couldn't be there to dictate it personally, John and I. And so overcoming that by putting in, okay, they have to have a coaching program. We have to connect with the coaches. We'll go up there occasionally. There again, we had to rely on putting a process in place that we could have some, I'm gonna call it checks and balances, but at the end of the day, what we're really saying is it's more about support and supporting the bigger mission of why we're in business in the first place, which is really to help people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And so I'm curious, switching gears a little bit with Yax Yoga. So Yax Yoga Concepts, sorry. That's the business that you guys run with your teacher trainings. And I feel like, this is another thing that I think a lot of yoga teachers are interested in. Like, what would it be like to run my own teacher training? Because they see gaps in the industry, et cetera, et cetera. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's been like building up a teacher training program and how to be successful with that?
Yeah, it's, I would say for those people, like, put the curriculum together and to the best of your ability and just start. Because if you're like me, I wanted to perfect it. I wanted to make sure everything was just every screw was tight and everything that I was going to teach was perfectly aligned in the right place. And I look back at the first teacher training and what we're doing now versus what we were doing then. There's just no way without starting, without saying, just committing to it, putting it together to the best of your ability, and then running through it. Because in the process of doing that first teacher training and doing it to the best of your ability, you're going to make an impact. You're going to create the experience that you want people to have, and you're going to get a lot of information, a lot of feedback as to how to make the second one better. And then at that point, just really be committed to reflecting, analyzing, and then making incremental changes along the way. Because right now what we're doing, the only way that we could do it was to start and then to continue to ask for the feedback from the students as to how we could make this better, what was missing, what was lacking, what was good, what was really good. Like, give us all the information that we need to help the next teacher training who's coming through to make it even better for them.
Yeah. The other thing I would mention with that is just to make sure that if you want to start a teacher training, to understand your why. Like what I mean by that is, what's your methodology? Like why do you do what you do when you do it? And to be able to understand that as deeply as you can will make a more dramatic impact on your students. And if you're doing teacher training to support your studio, it's also going to create that culture for your studio, so that every single teacher knows exactly what they're doing, why they're doing it, and when they're doing it. So literally, man, if I'm in a teacher's class and they come out, I can ask them a question like, well, why did you do this here? And they should have an answer for it. There's a reason for everything in their classes.
Yeah, that why ends up organizing how you put your teacher training together, and obviously if you're going through Yoga Alliance, they have, their standards that you have to follow, but even within each standard, what the practicum looks like, what the philosophy looks like, understanding the bigger why for each segment will then give you the information you need as to how you want to present the information and what are the key takeaways for students. Like for us, one of the biggest things, and what I would suggest for anybody doing a teacher training, is when you get to the philosophy and the spiritual principles, please make it grounded. We're so hardcore about this. Grounded meaning, if I learn it today, how is it going to apply to my life when I leave this training and on Monday morning I'm with my family and then I go to my job, or I do whatever my life looks like? What are those spiritual principles, those philosophical principles that you're teaching me? How do I relate it to my daily routine so that it's actually practical? And the reason we're so hardcore about it is that we grew up, our dad was a meditator, and so he was kind of in those circles of uber hippies and get people that thought they were going to meditate and dematerialize, which, I've read Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda's book, and I'm like, okay, there's some stuff that we can do.
Like master yogis can pull off some amazing things, undoubtedly, but we had our friends, our parents' friends, and we were young, Amanda, so our parents' friends telling us the craziest stuff, just all wrapped around the spirituality, just
not grounded at all. Oh my God. One of my dad's friends was named Slow Eagle, and he had some gifts, but most of the stuff he talked about was just ramblings of a madman.
So this man lived in our backyard in a tent for months and months and months. And he actually had special gifts. He could do stuff with animals. Chris was sitting in the backyard one day.
I'm 3 years old at this point.
Yeah. Young. And he looks over at Chris and is like, hey, Chris, I'm going to make that. You see that bee? I'm going to make it give me a kiss.
And sure enough, that bee landed on his bottom lip, bowed down, and gave him a kiss, and then flew off.
Whoa.
It was one of my first memories.
So he had some special gifts.
I feel like the world must be so weird if that's one of your first memories.
The fact that I'm not a drug addict or in jail is a miracle and a testament to the practice of yoga.
Oh my God. So we get up one morning, and Chris and I are too young to go to school at this point, but our older siblings are getting in our old station wagon for my mom to drive them to school, and the station wagon doesn't start. And so she goes inside the house, and my dad's having coffee with Slow Eagle, and she's like, James, the car won't start. He was like, all right, I'll be out in a minute. And so my dad and Slow Eagle come out, and Slow Eagle says, hey, James, jump in the driver's seat. I'll get this thing started. All of us in the car looking at this going down, so Slow Eagle puts his hands on the hood of the car and closes his eyes. And we're all like, oh my God, he's going to start the car. And my dad, he's like, all right, James, turn the key now. And he turns the key and nothing happens. And he was like, he did this again. And he's like, all right, James, start it now. And turns the key and nothing happens. And we were like, oh, that sucked. It was it was that kind of thing that we experienced over and over again that put this feeling of, when we teach spirituality, make it grounded enough so that I'm not trying to start cars with my hands, I'm trying to have a really solid functional relationship, like amazing relationship with my wife or my husband or my kids. I'm trying to have an amazing relationship with food, with money, with the things in life that we honestly struggle with, right? The things we actually have problems and issues and suffering from. Let's use spirituality in a way that's going to help us expand our lives that way. And whether we levitate or not doesn't really fucking matter.
Yeah. No, that's fine. No, I really love that, because I feel like one of the things that when I started getting more into yoga and teaching, that a lot of people asked about was like, what's with chakras? Like, tell me more about chakras. And I feel like I'd never really learned about the idea of the chakra system in a way that I could talk about in a concrete, grounded way. And so I'd be like, yeah, I don't really know, like, energy centers in the body. And since then, I've obviously learned lots more about it that I can talk about in a way that feels a little bit more relatable to somebody who's, not trying to start a car with their hands on the hood type thing. But I feel like that is so important. Like, people need to understand why we're doing things on the mat and how it relates to their real life. Like, I think that that's the thing that keeps people coming back. That's
the truth. Like, so much more effective than convincing people that they can dematerialize. And like chakra specifically, one of the game changers for us was Carolyn Meese's book, Anatomy of the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
She goes into the depth on the chakras in a grounded way, like a really amazing, like if we have blockages in specific energy centers in our body, it causes disease, it causes illness. And it's almost always something that is a stuck pattern from our past that we just haven't worked through. Like most of us know the work we need to do. It's simple. The idea is simple, but it's not easy, right? Tough conversation we need to have with our parents. That's blocking us in our root chakra. That's, for men may be affecting their libido in some way, or whatever, or creating a cancer or some effect on their body that is literally from stuff we haven't worked through in a very practical way. If we have addiction to something, right, alcohol or whatever it is, we have issues in our second chakra, right? In that energy center of the body. And Carolyn Meese just describes it in such a way that you're like, oh, and she backs up with stories and her life's work. It's a phenomenal.
Whether you get into, whether that's part of, like, if you love chakras and you're getting into it and you're talking about it, I think another really key element as far as like what someone can do in their teacher training is to teach through stories. This is one of the things that we really like through Russell Brunson's book and even actually with Stephen Larson who we're learning from right now, like storytelling. And it's so powerful because we all hate to be told what to do, right? No one, especially with the people we love the most, like if John tries to tell me what to do, like this, I just learned this and you should eat this way. I'm like, no, I'm definitely not going to do it, even if there's science behind it. Simply because you told me, I'm very conscious that is a pattern that I need to work
with. But if I
tell him I'm not going to do it.
If I tell him somebody else's story about why it's so good to do it, he's like, oh, okay, I get it. But it's tribal. I mean, storytelling is tribal. We evolved through storytelling. Even yoga evolved through storytelling until Patanjali said, no, I'm going to write this stuff down. This is important, guys. But we all learn the lessons of life from our elders around a fire at one point through stories.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this happens to all of us. Whenever we hear a story, we become entranced. We drop in. Like we want to hear the next part of the story. But it's the same thing in a movie. You catch just the first part of a movie and you fall into a trance. Like if I'm watching a movie and my wife asks me a question, like she hates it, I can't respond. Like first, men can only do one thing at a time. So that's all it is.
That's a cop out. You have a smaller corpus callosum, John. You can't quick switch.
I can't quick switch as fast. But my point is that we fall into trance through storytelling, and that is one of the most effective ways, because then that story, like when we're hearing a story, we are relating it back to the experiences in our life and then coming up with solutions, our own personal solutions based off what we're hearing in the story.
And then, so what this is the value of it is that when I tell my story, and so just as an example, one of the stories I tell in our teacher trainings and even in classes to a smaller extent, just because of limited time, is how I hated my dad for most of my life. The process of forgiveness that I had to go through to heal that relationship. So I'm not telling anyone to forgive their family, to forgive their father, their mother at all. I'm just telling my story. And if someone has any issue with their parent, mother or father, but typically father, all of a sudden what we call to mind when I'm telling that story is that scenario. And what they hear in the process of me forgiving my dad is a potential that could be for them. And this is, I think, the value of doing it in teacher trainings. But this is like this year for us in the studios has been, we've been very focused on helping our teachers with theming and with telling stories. And if it's not your story, because that takes a certain level of vulnerability that I think is the most powerful, but it's also hard to overcome, and we'll grow incrementally into it. So we have different strategies to do that. But this is the value of storytelling, is that people through your experience, they have their own epiphany, and that's that perspective shift that they need, that can literally like be that just that little bit of a turn in how they're seeing a situation that can free them from hardship, resentment,
decades of pain.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really powerful stuff. And
if I may add, not just even in teacher trainings, but even in business, how people, like when you got into yoga, you had an experience that captured you, that you were like, this is it. And you telling that story to somebody who hasn't tried yoga before, it gives them the potential, because they're going to see it as a potential in their lives. And so all of a sudden, I'm not saying go to yoga. I'm saying, oh, this is what happened for me. This is the struggles I was experiencing. This is what yoga did for me. And this is where I am now.
Here's the epiphany I had,
yeah,
and the transformation that happened in my life. And that's it. That's all we need to talk to people about. And they're gonna, at that point, a lot of people get motivated enough because they just hear the story. As opposed to saying, oh, you should come and do yoga. Like, oh, here's my story about why yoga made such a radical change in my life, why it's so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the stories of, just hearing about why somebody became a teacher and that whole background, it's always different and it's always really powerful. And I think that it's really cool to hear how, we've all ended up in the same place, yet we got here very different ways, which is, I think, really, really fascinating to me, at least. And it sounds like to you guys also. So that's cool. I'm curious, we've talked a little bit about sort of like business lessons that you guys have learned through your career. Do you guys have any other big business lessons that you've learned over the last, 15 years as you've been running a successful yoga business that you want to share with listeners today?
So there's 4 personal needs for people. This is something Tony Robbins talks about a lot. But if you can incorporate your classes and your structure in this way, you'll be successful in our opinion. So the four basic needs for people is certainty, as everyone loves to know what's going to happen. But if everyone knew all the time what was going to happen, life would get boring. So the next need is uncertainty or variability. Right? People love not knowing,
just a little bit of mystery,
just a little bit of mystery of life, right? And then the next need is significance. Right? They want to feel like they mean something in this world, right? And then the last need is connection and love. And so with the classes that we offer, Amanda, we do what we call a stability class, and a stability class is the same every single time. Our methodology that we use is based around the myofascial lines of the body. There's 7 myofascial lines. We systematically open up these myofascial lines, open and strengthen these myofascial lines throughout the entire class. And people come into the stability class, and it's balanced in a way that it's slow enough paced for beginners to be able to get a really good foothold and know how to do it. And then it's the same every time, so you can get really good traction. But it's also challenging enough that people could have 10, 20, 30 year practice and go in and feel successful in those classes as well. But the consistency, so there's the certainty. People know that that's going to be the same every single time. And then we offer flow classes. And flow classes are based around the same methodology, except the teacher who understands the methodology can shift the sequence according to how they want to express themselves, as long as it follows that methodology. So there's the uncertainty or the variability, right? So we offer those as our main styles. People have the certainty, they have the variability. The significance comes when our teachers acknowledge them in the class, the front desk acknowledges them as they walk in.
We instruct every front desk staff member that when someone walks in, you have to ask them their name, tell them your name, and shake their hand. And if they're humans, like, you have to make the connection. They're not like you. And then if you can, get out from behind the desk and remove the barrier. And then when people come in, you have to call them by their name. It's your job to know their names, and that's the significance. The love and the connection is all wrapped up in just asking them, how's your day? How are you doing today? And knowing their story, and then following up with them again. So it's basic stuff, but it's the most important stuff. And so connection and love obviously happens when people come into practice, and the community that they're in, like all yoga studios, there's a community that's built, so they feel that connection to other people in the class. Teachers talk to people after class and help them with whatever they need to. There's the connection, the love piece. So if you can use those as your guidelines within your studio and your business, you'll be successful, because you're accessing. There's actually 6 needs, but those are the 4 basic ones. And if you can touch on those 4 basic needs within your business and within your classes, people are gonna have a remarkable experience. Meaning they'll remark about their experience. They'll tell other people. So I think.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like the connection piece is so important. I feel like we can probably all relate to going to some sort of fitness class or yoga class or something where you just, maybe somebody says hello and they greet you, or maybe you just sign in and it feels very impersonal. And it's a totally different experience when you just feel like you're kind of like a faceless, nameless person in this experience, versus when somebody gets to know you and calls you by your name. You feel seen and heard, which then makes you feel more a part of the community, which makes you want to come back.
Amanda, have you ever gone to a yoga studio and the teacher is at the front desk, and it almost seems like a burden to them that you came into practice at their studio? And maybe maybe they don't own the studio, maybe they're just teaching there, but this weird, I am way more spiritual than you, because I'm teaching this class, and you can kiss my ring as you go by and get into the room.
Oh yeah, totally. Definitely had those experiences. And I'm always okay, I'm here to practice, but probably not my place here.
Right? The one time, maybe, I'm so there has to be a level of groundedness, a level of connection that's made, but giving offerings that have that consistency for people, that certainty for people, and then the variability for people. And then the significance happens when you acknowledge them in class, you acknowledge them outside of the class. And so, yeah, it's huge. Connection, obviously.
I think that the other tip I would give is to, I think there's one of the biggest problems within yoga studios is everyone just commoditizes the offerings, because everyone just competes on price. And it's really fascinating. So we opened up, and then other yoga studios, there was a few here and there, but we didn't model our pricing after anyone else. We said, listen, this is what we do. This is the amenities we have. This is the experience we have. And this is what we feel the value is. And so we charged a higher price. And then other yoga studios would open up, and they would look at our pricing and then just do $5 less for each package. And then someone else would open up, and then they would say, all right, I'm going to do $5 less than that person. And they don't ask the question, is that studio successful? And what ends up happening, I think there's this big blind spot in relationship to price and value. And the way that this industry operates at the current time is, the only way people are creating value is by lowering the price. And what that ends up doing is it commoditizes the whole industry. And then all of a sudden, people don't value the experience simply because the price is so low. I mean, we all know perceptually when you're you have an iPhone, I have an iPhone, I have a Mac, I have a laptop that is a MacBook. I mean, and one of the reasons I'll pay more is because I know the quality I'm getting, but I also intrinsically know I'm paying more for it, which means perceptually I know it's going to be a higher value. And I think we miss that in this world of like, all of a sudden, every other yoga studio is charging like $25 for 3 months of unlimited yoga. I'm like, how you can't like and I don't know if they know where they're modeling that pricing after, if they modeled it after anybody. But most of those models of like, hey, come in and like as an intro offer, you can do like 30 days for $5 or $10. They were brought about by these big gyms, these big box gyms that have the capital to operate at a loss, to put money out and never get the return on that investment until 6 months down the road when that person finally commits to a membership with them. But as a small mom and pop studio, and we don't have that luxury. And so we decided, like, we have an intro offer and it's a great offer, but it is like way more expensive than like the 4 or 5 other yoga studios that are in our area. And we're fine with it because that we know, and that's just the price, but also how to create an offer so that because the value can increase or decrease, not just based on price, but on the added value that you put on the offer itself. So maybe it's yoga classes and an intro offer, but we have information products, meaning like online classes and online tutorials that will bundle with that initial offer so that when someone comes in, they're immediately getting this higher value of, I'm not just walking into a class and like, as a yoga studio owner, I'm rolling the dice on whether they're going to like it or not. I'm helping to indoctrinate them and give them the education that they need so that they can understand why we do what we do, when we do what we do, and how they can quickly get better knowledge of what's happening in the studio. And with that, I can then charge more for it because it's a higher value. So I think everything that John said, yes, but also really learn and understand the difference between price and value, the relationship between the two, and how to create a better offer, because that is like for us has changed in the last 3 years, completely changed like the revenue that we're making, our success. And it's just been like absolutely one of the biggest game changers for us is just learning that information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think that this is one of the things I've thought about the most probably within, I guess, challenges within the yoga industry, because I do feel like there is too much free yoga. And I look at the community I live in and there's a ton of free yoga. And as yoga teachers, maybe you get some sort of like small gift or something in exchange, but a lot of times you don't. And it's like, okay, you should just be lucky or be grateful that you have this opportunity to teach, which sure, maybe for your first couple of classes, you could feel that way. But I know for me, I was just, after my first couple of years of teaching, I was like, no, like I'm worth making money. I'm not just going to teach all these free classes and undermine like the studios that I value here. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff within that. And I think that for yoga teachers listening, just remembering that regardless of if you've been teaching for 1 day or 20 years, you have value, you have something to offer. I think that that's one of the biggest things. And same with as a yoga studio, you always have something to offer and you need to value that.
It's huge. What you just said is gold, Amanda, because like what we're giving people is freedom. And if we don't understand that and we think we're just giving them an exercise routine that's kind of hip right now, we will eventually go back to a 9 to 5 and not be able to do this for a living. Like what we're offering people is freedom. Now, so what Chris said is so important, because what's going to end up happening in the future is that these big box gyms are going to start offering, if they haven't already, a lot of them do, yoga classes. And we have hot studios, so that kind of niches us a little bit. But these box gyms are going to get into that too. They'll start offering hot classes and they'll start offering yoga classes. Now, the difference is these box gyms are going to run, and they'll probably get really good teachers in there too to teach their classes, right? But what they are going to do is just simply teach asana. They're just going to simply teach a cool exercise routine that is hip right now. The difference between yoga teachers, yoga studio owners, how we're going to survive this shift when these big box gyms open up and try to go big with the yoga thing, is that we teach yoga. we're able, through offers like Chris just described, we're able to give people the actual strategies, tactics, frameworks to free themselves, which is what the world needs right now. We are able to teach not just good asana, but we're able to teach meditation. We're able to teach personal development. We're able to teach life skills. We're able to teach diet. We're able to teach all of these things that as yoga teachers, we practice ourselves. We just don't see that there is huge value in bundling that into a real offer. This is how yoga studios, people that are going to study and do the work, yoga studios are going to survive this shift into this takeover from big box gyms or from people just wanting to basically do yoga for, give yoga out for free, is offer a way for the market, right? Clients, students to get more than just asana, right? Because if somebody comes in and I can give them a package that's going to free them, right? It's going to give them diet plans. It's going to give them meditation skills and practices. It's going to give them at-home asana practice. It's going to give them life skills, personal development. They come and do this program with me. They're not going to go practice at a gym after that. They're going to continue to do asana at my studio because they know they're being supported in something bigger than just a routine. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I love all of that. That's such important stuff. I love chatting with you guys. I feel like I could keep you guys on the phone all day, but I want to be mindful of your time. Is there anything else that you want to share about, anything kind of yoga, business related inspiration for teachers before we wrap this up?
No, it was, well, yeah, I have one thing. There was a study done and it was done. So they had 3 groups of people and each had the very same, not the same one, but the same style of wine, same bottle of wine. And one group was charged, I forget the exact number. So I'll go with like the rough tier. It was charged like $25. The second group was charged for this bottle of wine, $50. And the last group was charged like $250. All the very same bottle of wine. Only thing that changed was what they were charged for it. And the feedback they got from the people that paid the lowest amount was, it was okay. The people that paid the mid-tier $50 mark, they said it was good. And the people that paid $250 for that bottle of wine said it was the most outstanding bottle of wine they've ever had. And I just want to really hammer the point home that you're setting people up for success. You're setting them up to be more committed. You're setting them up to like visually view and experientially view what yoga is and what it can do for them, to be more successful and to fall in love with it when you charge what you're worth. And when you go the opposite route, when you just do free yoga, and I'm great with like karma classes occasionally, and like you can do pro bono stuff and do your, there's ways of doing it that if you feel called to, support this demographic of people and just give them free yoga, I'm like all about that. But when you're in business of teaching and you're trying to make it work and like have this be your end all be all financial support without any other safety net, that one thing can be the difference maker for your success in your business, your yoga studio, or even if you're just going, like maybe you don't have a studio and you're just going around like doing retreats and teacher trainings. Charge what you're worth and remember the value that it's been created in your life, and then charging people more for it will help them see that value and experience the same thing that you've experienced.
Yeah. So what Chris is gold. What it comes down to is, who do you want to work with? Because you have models like Yoga for the People, which is in New York, and I think they opened up in LA also. But they're all donation based studio, donation with a $10 recommendation, something like that for the class. But they're all donation, and they're successful. But they're opening up in high density cities. So that could be a model, right? So what Chris is saying is, who do you want to serve? Like, who do you want to work with? And then understand that in order to become successful, we just need to create an amazing offer, meaning a package that's really going to go create results for people, right? Give people such life transformation that they're gonna want to stay with you and work with you forever. And the last thing I want to add to that is that your yoga teachers, like, you are one of the most powerful you're in one of the most powerful industries and the most powerful places to work. Like, you are changing lives on the front lines, like making a difference. Like, you watch the news for any amount of time and you see how absolutely insane the world is. And yoga teachers are out making a difference, actually shifting it. So you deserve to make a living doing this work, and just keep up the good fight.
Last thing I'd say is honor the struggle, because it's like 15 years, day in and day out, week in, week out, year in and year out. It's a struggle, but it's worth it. It's worth the effort.
Yeah, when you get people come out of class, or people come, after teacher training, or they come to you and like, just went through a divorce, or just had my parent pass away, or my significant other pass away, and this has just been so healing for me. This has made such a difference. That keeps you going. It keeps you motivated.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And if people want to come to your studio, check out a training, learn more about you guys, where can they go to find you?
YaxYogaConcepts.com is our website. You can follow us. Our handle on Instagram is @Yax Yoga Concepts. And if you want to hear our podcast, it's Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets. And we just launched that about a month and a half ago.
Amazing. Congrats. That's so awesome. I'll make sure that there's links for all of that in the show notes. And yeah, thanks again, Chris and John. This has been a really awesome conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Amanda. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
Okay, everyone, that's the episode with Chris and John Yax. I hope that you guys were able to tell who is who throughout that episode. And I hope that you guys, more importantly, enjoyed the episode and learned a lot from it. There's definitely some good pieces of business and entrepreneurial wisdom throughout the episode. As always, you can find the links that we talked about on the show notes, as well as all the notes. They'll be on the website at mbomyoga.com. You can also find me and everything having to do with MBOM on Facebook and Instagram at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And of course, you can join the private Facebook community at Yoga Business Badasses. Thank you so much for listening and for supporting the podcast, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.